Hey guys, I just wanted to do my review of Arrow Season 5, Episode 21, Honor Thy Fathers. So, the episode starts off with Quentin and Oliver no closer to finding Prometheus than they were for the last few weeks, and he ends up getting a wooden crate delivered to him which contains like a concrete corpse of a councilman Good Councilman like Goodwin, I think, or Goodman. It's basically a councilman who has been missing for since 2002, was declared dead in 2003, was apparently murdered in 2002. And it was apparent Oliver realized it was sent by Chase as a message, and they try to find DNA evidence off of the concrete to see who was responsible for killing the councilman. And when they have Quentin and Dinah bring the forensic evidence back to Oliver, and Thea had just shown up, by the way, and it turns out that the killer was Robert Queen, Oliver and Thea's father. Thea's willing to believe that their dad was guilty for the murder, considering all the horrible stuff he did, his his involvement with Malcolm Merlyn, and how he was being a corrupt businessman. Oliver wants to give him the benefit of the doubt and just think it's Chase playing mind games. He's, Robert Queen's being framed. He's trying to dishonor his good name and wants to find proof that Chase tampered with evidence. They find out that Justin Claiborne's lawyer was the last person to see the councilman. The lawyer just shows up with a thumb drive with a video on it, and he flat out admits that he's been in contact with Chase for the last several weeks, but was too afraid to report him to the police because of how much of a threat Prometheus is and how dangerous he was. And the lawyer says he knew Oliver would reach out to him, and that's why he gave him the thumb drive. Oliver doesn't want to look at it because he just feels like, I played enough of Chase's mind games. And when Oliver decides to go out into the field because all of Chase's convictions got overturned since he was exposed, including Derek Sampson is back on the streets. He was trying to recreate the I don't remember what it was called, the pathogen that Justin Claiborne was trying to use in that season 1 flashback that was shown in episode 9 of this season. And so now Derek Sampson is trying to release it onto the whole city at the behest of Prometheus, because the latter wants to, as a latter's twisted way of honoring his father's legacy. Thea watches it, and when Oliver comes back after an attempt to try to stop Derek Sampson, who was the wrestler Stardust from the earlier episodes of the season, who was who doesn't feel pain, and they both watched the video, and it turns out that Robert Queen was responsible. He got into a fight with the councilman and pushed him into a vat of concrete and covered it up. It was granted, it wasn't premeditated. It was probably just manslaughter, but it was the fact that Oliver has to grapple with the fact that his father was willing to take somebody else's life and go that far, especially with Chase getting into his head that he's nothing but a murderer. And it takes some pep talk from Felicity to understand that he doesn't have to be his father's son. He has to be his own man. And he doesn't have to carry on the crusade for his father's sake. He can do it for his own sake, and which finally convinces Oliver to put back on the Green Arrow costume, because he's been wearing this black mask and all black for the last several episodes. And they go to confront Derek Sampson and crew. Team Arrow is able to take out Derek Sampson and his gang, while Dog gunning him down, and Diggle being able to tie him up and stop the device from dispersing the pathogen. And Oliver's too busy confronting Prometheus, and they have this whole fight in the stairwell, which it's not. Granted, it's not going to top the stairwell fight with Daredevil season 2, but it was impressive in its own right. And during the whole fight is when there was a scene where Thea was asking what does Chase have the lawyer that would be so willing to work with him, like what information does he have? And it turns out, and then Oliver tries in order to break Chase, is that Claiborne wanted to disown Prometheus because of the fact that he was so mentally unstable, and just says that, our father, at least my father may have been a lot of things, but at least he wasn't willing to give up on me, unlike yours. And so suspiciously, Chase just puts down his sword and kneels before Oliver and just says, kill me and get it over with, and just says, but Oliver just punches him out and hands him over to Argus, and the whole team celebrating, and also, and Thea finds like a video message from Robert Queen after watching the whole Robert Queen, after the video where he sees Robert Queen murder the councilman. It was a video message it was like a second part of a video message that like it shows in the flashbacks and in flashbacks during season 3 how there's a video message left for Oliver from Robert Queen about righting his wrongs. There was also a second part of that video in which that was addressed to Thea, in which he says, you got to look after your brother. You're stronger than him. No one can provide emotional support for him like you can. And they kind of accept the fact that, their parents are complex people, but they don't have to be like their children's parents, and, they can just got to live their own lives and, leave the past in the past and move on. And speaking of the past, Anatoly does take Oliver back to Lian Yu, and this is probably one of the worst flashbacks I've ever seen on this show. Like, it was just full of like one plot convenience after another. Like the one thing I can accept is the fact that that Anatoly, the part of the plan was Anatoly was going to pay a boat, a fisherman, like a fisherman to like the turn of the boat that picked up Oliver and the pilot. It basically Anatoly paid the fishermen to take that boat out to that area, to Lian Yu area, just so Oliver could fire that arrow and send that bonfire signal so he picked up and found, just so he can just an attempt to cover up the fact and that make it look like he was on the island for the whole 5 years, and explain why he didn't come back to Star City earlier. And but it has like one plot convenience after another. But that I can go with, but it's like the fact that it's like, Deathstroke's mask washes up on the island, and they just said it's a bad, Anatoly says it's a bad omen. Oliver just like puts it on the stick like you see in the pilot and puts the arrow through it, and then that's basically the mystery of it. That's how you find it on the island in the pilot. And then Anatoly gives him all these, like, this whole entire getup to make it look like he's been on the island for years and years. And it's like, people will buy the fact that, there's no barber shop on Lian Yu. So apparently, so I guess, like, he had, like, the beard, the long-ass beard he had that made him look like Tom Hanks in Castaway. It was, like, a fake beard. And, he had all the clothes and the arrows and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, that's like the most like anticlimactic thing I could have imagined. I thought this would have stretched out. I know like these flashbacks can be a drag, but I thought it would have stretched out a little bit. And and maybe like in the flashbacks it would jump forward like a few months. Like there would be a huge cameo by Deathstroke because he's supposed to show up in the season finale. And but it just seems like they just wanted to just rush it and just get it over with. And I guess they're just as over these flashbacks as we are. I don't know. I just found it kind of disappointing that they just try to wrap it up the way they did, and I just didn't like it. I mean, the only thing that happened at this point was that right before Oliver's supposed to, send out that bonfire, is that Kovar and company followed him back to Lian Yu and tranquilized him as a means of, I guess, torturing him to death and getting revenge. And there's another subplot in which um Renee Wilder talked to her lawyer about getting his daughter back, but as soon as he found out he has to have a hearing, all of a sudden he has this whole he gives this whole speech about how like, oh, now traumatized Zoe about talking about the mom's drug addiction, her death, and how he treated her, and then he says like, oh, you know what, it's not worth it. Maybe I'm not gonna want to traumatize her again. And it just seems like more contrived drama. It just seems like more repetitive of the couple episodes before when he was so skittish about wanting to have her come back into her life, and it just seems like they're just looking for excuses to just drag out this whole thing about getting his daughter back. If assuming Renee was going to get his daughter back, but it just seems like it's so silly because he doesn't show up to the hearing, then he's denied custody, and Renee was presumably fine with that because he says like, "Oh, I don't want to put her through that trauma again, look like a bad father." And it just comes across as him as it's less about Zoe and more about him as it's just thinking about himself mostly. And it's more self conscious about being looked down upon, and it's like he's not thinking about his daughter's well being as much as he thinks he is, and even though Quinn tries to tell him that looking like you're going to traumatize her by looking like you don't want to be with her and not wanting to start anew and whatnot, it falls on deaf ears. So that was just kind of that just felt like forced drama to me, and I'm just kind of tired of it. And I personally I just hope that it's not drag. I mean, there's only two more episodes this season, so hopefully that gets resolved. Because Kurt Renee's has probably the biggest character arc of anybody this season, and I kind of just wanted to end on a high note for his sake, and just want the guy to be happy. It's not wrong. But anyway, it's a pretty good episode. It turns out that, and also one other thing, it does turn out that because even when Oliver's giving a speech about how Robert Queen is guilty, but he also mentions how Robert Queen gave his life to make sure he survived and came back to the city, serve it, without going into too much details for the obvious reasons. But then it turns out Chase is in his Argus cell, just smirking at the whole speech because suggesting that he obviously has a backup plan, and he's going to get out because, like I said, there's 2 more episodes left, and there's still Artemis is out there, there's still Black Siren, he still has Talia al Ghul, he still has allies that could be a threat to the Team Arrow and to also help him out if need be and have similar goals. So anyway, guys, how do you feel about the episode? How do you feel about the flashback? Did you feel it was kind of anticlimactic? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.